And here is another short lesson where we're going to learn some basics about macromolecules, not micromolecules. And one of the things you're going to learn is that for some reason, water seems to hold two parts of a macromolecule together, kind of like Captain America's holding a helicopter to this building. That's from Captain America Winter Soldier, if you are a Marvel fan. The very first thing you need to remember, and you should have learned this in freshman biology, is that biomolecules are made of monomers and polymers. So a monomer is going to be one of something because mono means one. Poly means many, and I'm going to have something at the very end of the notes with some of these kind of root words, and you're going to need to add the definitions that are here in red. So a monomer is a single subunit of a biomolecule, kind of like what you're seeing down here. And then you have these units that can be joined together, covalently bonded together, so a strong bond holding them together to form polymers, which have many monomers joined together. Most biomolecules have specific monomers and polymers that you will need to remember, with one major exception. And that exception is lipids. Lipids are grouped together not so much based on structure, but on another property that we'll talk about when we talk about that group of biomolecules in general. So when we're building polymers and making monomers, we have two processes that are important for that. The first one is hydrolysis, and we're going to break down this word as well, because hopefully that will help you remember which reaction is hydrolysis and which is the other one we're going to talk about next. So hopefully you know that hydro means water, and then lysis means to break. So literally hydrolysis means break water, and that's what you're going to be doing during this reaction. What this reaction is meant to do is break molecules into smaller pieces, and it does that by cleaving or cutting the covalent bonds between monomers. So water is lysed or broken into a hydrogen ion and a hydroxide ion. Then that hydrogen ion is stuck onto one monomer, and the hydroxyl group or hydroxide ion is added to the other monomer, and that breaks the bond between them. And if you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, here's a nice handy dandy diagram. So you start out with a polymer. In this case, it's two carbohydrate monomers joined together, and some water. That water is split into an OH and an H, and those two groups are basically used to cleave this bond or break this bond. So you'll notice that oxygen that was joining these two monomers is right here. And then the water molecule that was starting the reaction with was broken apart, and half of it went here and half of it went there. And joining those OH and H to these monomers is going to let you break them apart and separate that bond. So when you're breaking down large molecules into smaller ones, you're going to use hydrolysis. And this is more specifically for our course when you're breaking down polymers into monomers, not necessarily if you're breaking down like glucose into carbon dioxide and water. That's going to be a different set of reactions. The opposite of hydrolysis is dehydration synthesis, which you can also use the name to help you remember what it is. You are going to dehydrate or remove water from something, and you're going to use that removal of water to synthesize or make something. So this is also called by two other names that I want to make sure that you know, just so you don't get confused. The first name is polymerization, which should hopefully makes sense because you are using this process to make polymers. And it's also sometimes called a condensation reaction because you're basically taking out some liquid water or like condensing out some water. So you have two smaller molecules, two monomers joined together through a covalent bond. This is done by taking out a hydrogen ion from one monomer and a hydroxide ion or a hydroxyl group from the other monomer. And then when you've lost that water molecule or the equivalent of water molecule from the original reactants, those monomers can then be connected together. And again, I have a diagram. So you have two monomers of glucose here. Notice that we have two OH groups facing each other, and if we take out the hydroxyl group from one monomer and the hydrogen ion from the other monomer, those two can react to form water, and then this oxygen that's left behind is then used to bridge or to bind those two monomers together, and you make polymers out of it. So we will talk a little bit about, I will mention hydrolysis and dehydration synthesis again, but we're not going to necessarily focus on them a whole ton because I'll be talking about what the polymers of each of these biomolecules are and what the monomers are. And sorry, my cat wanted to say hi. So with that being done, I just have a random dinosaur at the end because honestly, I couldn't find a good Bitmoji to match this. All right, see you for the next lesson.